Game one of the series between the Minnesota Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights starts tonight, and we have you covered with key storylines, X Factor players, and predictions with this special crossover edition of Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is a special crossover edition with Locked On Golden Knights as we dive into the particulars of this series. We'll take a look at some key factors on both sides as well as some important storylines heading into this matchup. So let's dive right in, gear you up for game one here tonight. And welcome into a special preview edition of Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights as we dive into the round one matchup between the Minnesota Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights. Seth Toupal here from Locked On Wild, joined by Chris Gawlik of Locked On Golden Knights. And Chris, a rematch of a few seasons ago when these two teams matched up in the opening rounds, but very different stories, I think, heading into to this matchup compared to the last time.
Similar stories and not so similar stories, of course. First time these two teams met, we had a 7-game marathon. Golden Knights almost failed to close out after having a 3-1 lead, and insert overtime hero playoff hero Matthias Janmark with a hat trick. How about that?
Yeah, and I remember vividly watching that game 7, and Jonas Brodin gets hurt within the first 4 minutes, and Wild just could not hang on and get it done. But we will see what happens in this series because there are a lot of storylines to dive into here. So let's just start with the biggest on the Vegas Golden Knights side. What are the biggest storylines for Vegas heading into this matchup?
Health, definitely. I see the second segment kind of highlighting the Wild side of this. Golden Knights, despite having pockets of recent games without Tomas Hertl, Alex Pietrangelo, Jack Eichel, just to name a few, they're all Nicholas Hague, another one. They're all fully healthy and ready to go. Now it's game 83 or game 1 of the playoffs, so no one's fully healthy necessarily. But this is going to be the healthiest the Golden Knights have been really in quite some time. I don't know if they had 8 games with an entire healthy roster in this season. But again, it doesn't really matter in the regular season. It matters once the playoffs come. So we'll start with health, and then I think goaltending is the next one. If Adin Hill can keep it together and improve on his lifetime, I think it's a .936 playoff save percentage or something like that. If he can keep that going, the Golden Knights will be a tough out.
Yeah, it comes down to health for me too. I mean, they threw out a stat in the broadcast in the game against the Anaheim Ducks. It was the first time the Minnesota Wild had their full lineup since November 11th, which is just insane to think about. And the Wild have Kirill Kaprizov missed half the season. Joel Eriksson missed 30 games. You have major players on this roster that missed significant portions of time, and the Wild got off to the great start. They had the most points in the league through December 4th, and after that, it was really just about trying to kind of keep their heads above water. And at points they did. At points it looked like it was going to fall apart, and it's going to be fascinating to see which Minnesota Wild team we get in this series. Do we get the one that had the full complement of players, looks like they could beat just about anybody in the league? Or do we get the team down the stretch that struggled to score, that had tough times cracking different goalies throughout the course of the season? Health is number one for me, but I think on the offensive side, offense is number two for me. Who is going to present a consistent scoring threat in this series? The Wild's after January 1st, The Wild averaged just over 2 goals per game all the way down the stretch. And, that's not just like a week or two. That's a large sample size. And I know Kirill Kaprizov was out of the lineup, but there just was nobody that stepped up to lead the group consistently. And going up against the Vegas Golden Knights team that has Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, Pavel Dorofeyev, Tomas Hertl, you've got guys that have had extremely good offensive seasons. Kirill Kaprizov's going to be expected to do a lot of the heavy lifting in this series, but who else? That is the biggest question, I think, for me.
For me, is Pavel Dorofeyev going to be the playoff? Is he going to contribute the same way in the playoffs he did in the regular season? Definitely a coming out party. 35 goals, 52 points. Tomas Hertl, 32 goals, and Eichel 28. Ivan Barbashev 23. But yeah, Dorofeyev. If Dorofeyev can contribute, not just on the power play, his power play metrics are brilliant, but if he can contribute on the 5-on-5, that's certainly something to keep an eye on right there. Golden Knights were 6th overall in scoring in the NHL, goal differential of plus 56. Something that got me when we were previewing the series for Locked On VGK yesterday. The Wild are a minus 11 goal differential overall. So that's curious to see how that's going to play out. You've got the special teams metrics for both sides. Neither team can kill a penalty. Golden Knights, of course, have had a video game power play.
Yeah, talk me through that a little bit. I know we'll talk about it more in the third segment, but just combing through the numbers, I was floored at the fact that the Golden Knights were one of the teams that went on the power play the fewest, yet they had the second most. They had the second highest power play percentage in the league, and even with a low amount of power play opportunities, they still were 12th in the league in power play goals. It seems like it's just automatic. If they go on the power play, you're getting a power play goal.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the Oilers for the last few years, the power play merchants they've always been. But that said, the Golden Knights have a lot of other things that the Oilers don't, like defense and goaltending. But yeah, going back to the power play, and the interesting thing you mentioned is the amount of times the Golden Knights have been on the power play. They don't get a lot of power plays, but when they do, the percentage, I think it was 29.3 or something stupid like that, ridiculous. But the reason the Golden Knights don't get a lot of power plays, they don't get a lot of extra man advantages, is because of the transition game. The Golden Knights are not your typical puck possession team. Dump and chase, work the cycle, break down the defense, and eventually you find a soft spot, whether it's a shot from the point that deflects or whatever it is. They're not that just continuous passing team like you'll see a McDavid and a Draisaitl. I keep talking about the Oilers here, or other highly skilled teams in the NHL. And Toronto Maple Leafs, another one, I guess, with all the skill that they have. The Golden Knights will absolutely crush you in transitional opportunities. They start getting constant 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s. If the first breakout pass can cover 2 lines, old school 2-line pass days. If that first breakout pass can be clean and crisp and it triggers something, that's where the Golden Knights are lethal. And that's also why that they don't get a lot of power play opportunities, because they are not that they're not a good puck possession team. They can cycle just fine when needed. LA Kings team that plays that boring, a boring trap style like the Canadians used to. Not as boring as they used to, but you know where I'm going with that. They're not afraid to chip and chase and wear down the other team's defense, but back to the transition. The Golden Knights transition gets going, watch out. And that's also the reason they don't get a lot of power plays.
And on the flip side of that, too, least second fewest penalties called against in the league. So on the Minnesota Wild side for special teams, there aren't going to be many opportunities for them to go on the power play, which
less penalties in general in the playoffs called.
Yeah, which further underscores that if the Wild do get those opportunities, they just have to capitalize on them. And it's a power play that tends to be perimeter centric. That's not going to cut it.
I wouldn't sleep on the Golden Knights penalty kill either. Regular season, Pietrangelo hasn't been right. He's probably still not right, to be completely honest with you. Willingly missed the 4 Nations due to what he called an ailment. Finally missed a few games down the stretch to address that. Played game 82, didn't look very good. Definitely concede that, but it was like the horse needing the start. First time out after a layout. Hopefully he'll look a little bit better. But when I tell you a defensive core with Shea Theodore, Noah Hannafin, Alex Pietrangelo, Nicholas Haig, and Zach Whitecloud, Braden McNabb, unsung hero of this team, basically going back to 2017 now. That's a pretty good defensive core. I think they're going to figure it out. And I don't think of the 16 teams that qualified for the Stanley Cup playoffs, I don't think the Golden Knights PK metric is going to be near the bottom like it was in the regular season. At least if the Golden Knights wish to advance beyond Minnesota, that definitely will need to get the defense in order. And I think the defense will be just fine.
Well, we will talk more about just how the Minnesota Wild are going to try to crack this defense, what Vegas is going to try to do to the Minnesota Wild's defense in the final segment. I want to get to key players in this series, the X factors, the players that could make or break this series for both teams. We will discuss that as we continue our preview edition of Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25, to Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen. Welcome back to our special preview edition of Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights, diving into the particulars for this round one matchup. And Chris, let's dive into the X Factor players, the players that could make or break this series for both teams. Let's start on the Vegas side. Who are a few players that really could sway this series in the Golden Knights' favor?
Start with Brett Howden. Brett Howden has been a Swiss Army knife, kind of took place of what Mike Amadio did before he left this previous offseason to go to the playoff-bound Ottawa Senators. How about that? But Brett Howden, what can we say? 23 goals, which matched his total scoring output for the last 3 seasons. So he scored as many goals this year as his last 3 combined. Kelly McCrimmon, general manager, locked him up on just a sick deal that favors the Golden Knights as well, assuming he continues with this. I mean, Howden wouldn't have signed for, I think, 3 or 3.5 million AAV if he expected to be a 20-goal scorer. So what can you do about that? So we'll start with Brett Howden, Nicholas Waugh, another one. We're talking fourth-line players, as odd as this sounds right now, but both those players will have special teams visibility. I mean, obviously, you can't not talk Eichel and Hurdle and everything, but Dorofeyev, we hit him a little bit earlier on. Biggest question is, can Dorofeyev do it in the playoffs? He did in the regular season. KHL player, Golden Knights prospect for a few years, had his just coming out party this year. It's been phenomenal. So 3 players definitely to key in: Dorofeyev, Howden, Nicholas Waugh. And on the defensive side, I think you really want to see Shea Theodore continue to do what he did. Nearly a point per game player in the regular season. I still bang the drum anytime someone gives me a microphone that he is a dark horse Norris candidate, health pending every season. He can't play more than 50-something games. If you can put together an 80-ish game season and put together 70, 75 points, I'm not saying he's going to be a finalist for the Norris by any means, but certainly someone that's in that conversation. Maybe it gets a couple of votes here and there, and he's in the top 5 or 6.
On the Minnesota Wild side, I'm going to go with one that probably doesn't qualify, but based off of his previous postseason numbers, I'm putting him in here. Matt Boldy for my number one.
Love Matt Boldy.
A great player.
Yeah.
And he had an interesting season because career highs pretty much across the board, with the exception of goals. But he is just he has stretches where he kind of runs cold, and with Kirill Kaprizov out of the lineup, didn't really take over like a lot of Wild fans were hoping he would. The Wild are expecting that Kirill Kaprizov's going to do his thing. Who steps up to be that number 2 option is going to be everything in this series. And if Matt Boldy can do that, then you can put up numbers that kind of contend with what Jack Eichel and Mark Stone are going to do in this series. If it's just Kirill by himself, that's going to be a problem. If you can get a couple of other guys to step up and be consistent scoring options, that's going to go a long way for this Minnesota Wild team. So Boldy's number 1 for me. I'm going to put the 2 trade deadline acquisitions as number 2. As far as X factors go, Gustav Nyquist and Justin.
I was just looking at
Brazeau.
Nyquist. It's funny. I was going to ask you about him.
He just
hasn't fit in, right?
No, he looks like he has lost a step. And if he is going to be playing, if he's going to be playing in the lineup, plain and simple, like, you got to be contributing. And it on the Justin Brazeau side, he was brought in to provide some size on that 4th line. He's done that. He's scored, I think, 1 goal since he was acquired. So the offense hasn't necessarily been there as much as the physicality has. If he can provide both, then you can start to kind of go across the board and say, okay, top line versus top line, we're kind of holding serve. 4th line versus 4th line, we're kind of holding serve. But there have been too many instances throughout the season where you've got lines that are just out there existing. Like, they're not really throwing anything at, they're not really contributing anything. And you can't just be present in a series like this. You've got to be making an impact when you're out there on the ice. So those are my number 2. My 3rd X factor in this series, Zeev Boyum, who practiced. Top defensive prospect, practice for the Wild.
Gonna run the power play, right?
Yeah, on the 3rd.
Gonna run the power play. Let's go,
number 1 power play. And
love it.
This team, they're gonna need it. The Wild are gonna need somebody.
I love stories like this. I think it's gonna be so much fun. Honestly, I think it's great.
Yeah, it would just be great if he could come in and even get that power play to where it's, again, I talk about consistent threat. It's too perimeter centric a lot of the time for the Minnesota Wild. And if he can push things downhill, that's going to go a long way. It's going to be his first NHL action. So there's a little bit of pressure in there as well.
Rookie lap in the playoffs. Let's go.
That would be a lot of fun.
I'll see it tomorrow. I'll be there.
We haven't gotten official word yet, but it's just trending that way. So I would imagine he'll play, and what a story that's going to be.
For sure, yeah. I mean, it's the playoffs. That's stories like that is what makes it fun. I mean, of course, I hope the Golden Knights things come up on the Golden Knights side when it's all said and done. But it's playoff hockey; anything can happen, and I don't think the Wild have enough respect as far as the betting side goes. I've seen the series favoring the Vegas Golden Knights anywhere like nationally in about -240 to locally to -300. Those are bet the Wild. I'm not saying the Wild are going to win the series, but if you're going to put any of your money into this, do not bet the Golden Knights side. There's absolutely no value. I know it's a perennial 2 versus 7 seed if we're going to go old school for a second, but that does not matter. We've seen some great stories come out of the Wild cards. Just want to highlight Adin Hill for a second here on the Golden Knights side. Career save percentage in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs of .932. Regular season, he gets it done. Congrats on him. He got a 50 appearance season. I had some fans locally giving me a little bit of crap because I questioned if Adin Hill ever had the ability to get 50 games in a single season in the National Hockey League. So good on Adin for accomplishing that. And now we get to see playoff Adin Hill. .932 save percentage. He also logged in the 22-23 Stanley Cup playoffs, which was the second highest overall save percentage since the NHL started monitoring that stat, only second to Tim Thomas, actually, of the Boston Bruins when they won the Cup. So if Aiden Hill gets going and that defensive core gets going, that can certainly pose trouble. You got a Stanley Cup pedigree, championship pedigree behind the bench, and of course on the ice. So I think the Golden Knights can be the class of the series. No disrespect on the Wild, just the Golden Knights have had that recent experience. But the Wild, they're also kind of tired of being joked about being that first round exits. And I think that's going to motivate them, and it's going to make it no less than a 6-game, possible 7-game series.
Yeah, I like that take because I was looking on ESPN, and 19 of the 20 people that they polled picked the Golden Knights.
They all picked the Oilers to win the Pacific, so they're idiots. Don't listen to them.
Oh boy. But I do think I do think at some point you just get tired of being the consistent first round exit. And so I think that does translate into at least a couple of wins. And I'll say on the Wild goaltending side too, Philip Gustafsson, I think is certainly capable of stealing a game. He's gonna need to be on his A game with the transition game that you mentioned the Golden Knights like to have. He's going to need to be on his A game in this series, but he showed throughout the year that he is more than ready for that. So I think we got a really fun goaltending matchup in this series as well. But I've got some numbers that kind of concern me that I'll bring up here in segment number 3. I think high danger chances is going to be a huge theme in this series, and I crunched them. So we'll talk about the keys to the series to wrap things up as we finish our special preview edition of Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights is brought to you by Game Time. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here. And if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building is next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer, and with last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. My favorite feature of Game Time is the all-in pricing, which shows you the total cost up front with none of those surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Final segment of today's preview edition of Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights. Seth Toupal and Chris Gawlik here. And Chris, as far as keys to the series go, I'm going to circle right into the high danger chances. The Vegas Golden Knights, number 1 in the league in high danger shots as an offense. And that certainly speaks to the transition game, as you noted. The Minnesota Wild, 6th best on defense as far as limiting those high danger shots. But on the other side, the Minnesota Wild offensively were 2nd to last in the league. Seattle Kraken were last by a large margin. Minnesota Wild were 2nd to last in high danger shots on offense. Now, the Vegas Golden Knights defensively, they were 24th in terms of high danger shots allowed. So one of the biggest keys for me in this series is, can the Minnesota Wild get to the net? Vegas defensively, it has shown that, sometimes they're susceptible to those types of shots, but the Wild, when things aren't going well, they tend to be way too perimeter centric. So that's one of the biggest things for me here is we know Vegas is going to get to the net. Can the Wilds hold them at bay in that category? Can they capitalize offensively is the biggest key for me.
So you mentioned the perimeter game, high danger, and net front presence and everything. One of the most annoying things watching a Golden Knights game as someone who follows and supports the team is when they give up a goal and you see that overhead camera from the rafters where it basically is over the crease. You see the Vegas Golden Knights goaltender you see a Minnesota Wild player or an opposing player, I should say, and you see nobody else. That is something that the Golden Knights have had issues with. So if they can find ways to create a little net front presence, that could actually work out. That's an area of opportunity if we're going to talk corporate for a second for the Golden Knights. Yeah, I know you like that. I hate corporate world. Anyway, moving on from that, I like the high danger stuff. I was kind of piggybacking with that as well. I think the Golden Knights, the key to the series for me is going to be, you have two acquisitions recently. Golden Knights didn't make a big splash. That was the biggest groundbreaking news of the NHL, by the way. No LTIR shenanigans and no big splashes. Although speaking of LTIR, everyone else is on that train right now. So that's going to be interesting as the CBA comes up in a couple of years. But for me, let's see what Riley Smith and Brandon Saad bring to the table. Riley Smith definitely has the candle burning again since he got away from New York and Pittsburgh for that matter. Brandon Saad, same thing. I think he had like one game with a hat trick with the Blues early on the season, had like no goals, and now he's finding ways to contribute. He's going to be on the third line, I believe. So we'll see how that shakes out. For me, William Karlsson, Riley Smith, Brandon Saad, are they going to be able to? There's never an issue with most teams' first, second, and fourth lines. The biggest area of opportunity for many teams throughout the season and the playoffs are the third line. Well, you got William Karlsson with Vegas Golden Knights, who has notably given players like Connor McDavid fits as far as keeping him under control for a 6 or 7 game playoff series. And then you got Jack Eichel, who's pretty good at that, wearing the defensive hat as well. Maybe an outside Selke candidate this year. We'll see if his face-off numbers prevent him from getting the right consideration or not. So the biggest key to the series, I think, long story longer, as we're rambling a little bit here, is going to be the secondary scoring. Eichel's going to do something. Mark Stone's going to impose his will on the game. Secondary scoring from players like William Karlsson, Riley Smith, Brandon Saad, and can the fourth line continue to bring the energy and be a lineup mismatch? You mentioned the issues with the fourth line with the Minnesota Wild. Can the Vegas Golden Knights fourth line capitalize and not just do well against the Wild fourth line, but do well against all 4 lines for the Minnesota Wild? That will make things very difficult for the Wild if that happens.
Yeah, and another key for me on the Wild side is the start. Heard it in game 78 of the season. The Wild players after the game said we just weren't ready. It was against Calgary. Said we just weren't ready to match the intensity that Calgary had. And I'm like,
they were desperate too.
It's game 78 in this, and I get that they had to have it, but like it's postseason now. Like you don't get second opportunities for this. You don't get to say, well, that was regular season. This is playoffs now. It is the playoffs. And being the team that is the underdog in this series, you've got to find ways to break through. And scoring first for the Minnesota Wild has been just a massive key for them all season. And with the style of play that they have shown the ability to come back from multi-goal deficits during the regular season. You can't rely on that in the playoffs.
No team can.
It's just ratcheted up to a completely different degree, and they are going to need to just finally tune some things. And I think scoring first, or at least getting off to good starts, I think is going to be a huge key in this series. Because if Vegas comes out and just dominates, that's deflating. That's deflating for a team, and if they can come out and bring the intensity right off the bat, then it's game on in this series.
For sure. I mean, both teams need the right start. That goes without say. And you're not in trouble until you lose at home. We can play all those games all we want here, but at the end of the day, both teams do got to take care of business at home, and the Minnesota Wild got to find a way to steal 1 or 2 on the road, as do the Vegas Golden Knights. And a couple players missing from practice yesterday in Vegas, but Coach Cassidy mentioned that there's no issues there. They'll all have a full practice today, Saturday, so not going to be too many issues on the health side. But I like the start. I like the intensity. Is it going to be too much for the Golden Knights, right? There's going to be a better play intro. The crowd's going to be more hyped. Is it better in a spot like this for the Wild to be on the road as the underdog? Because, what do they got to lose? They're the 7th seed, right? They're kind of playing on house money right now, not necessarily trying to take anything away from them, but that could work in their advantage. And mean, what if the Wild could score the first goal in the first 3 minutes of the game and just take the crowd right out of it? I mean, there you go. That's an opportunity. Selfishly, I had this image hit my head Thursday or Friday. Wild fans might not like this, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. Let's just assume game 5 or 7, the goal, it's an elimination game favoring the Vegas Golden Knights, and they have like a 4-1, 5-1 lead. There's 2 or 3 minutes left in the game, and out comes Marc-Andre Fleury to take the Nets for his final couple of minutes. Obviously, Marc-Andre Fleury means the world to us in Vegas, same for Pittsburgh. But, so again, I know Wild fans don't want to see it play out like that, but selfishly, if the game does happen like that, I could not imagine the ovation that Vegas would give Marc-Andre Fleury for, 3, 4, 5, however long he's in there for. That would be very, very bittersweet. I know Wild fans don't like that. I'm not trying to dishonor you or anything like that. But that said, I think selfishly as a VGK fan, that would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and that's an interesting angle to this series too. Obviously, with Fleury being in net the last time
he's at some point, I think.
Yeah,
I think he'll be a factor.
He'll play a role for sure. If Philip Gustafsson struggles in this series, you're going to need him to come in and kind of stem the tide. So it's going to be, I think, a great battle between these two teams. But I feel like there are 3 or 4 things that the Wild need to have in their favor. Will they get all of them? That's going to be the big question. So as far as predictions go, I'll start with mine just right off of that thought. I'm picking the Golden Knights to win in 6 because, again, I think you need a strong net front presence. You need a consistent second option scoring. You need to be absolutely rock solid on the power play. I think the Wild maybe get 2 out of those 3. But I think in order to beat a team like the Vegas Golden Knights in this series, I think you need all 3. And whatever that third one that they don't get ends up being, we'll see as it plays out during the series. But I'm going Vegas Golden Knights in 6. But with how this Minnesota Wild season has gone, if there is a different result, it would not shock me in the slightest.
No, I mean, again, said this probably 4 or 5 times. It's playoffs. Anything can and does happen. And 1 or 2 of these wild card teams every year usually do find a way to advance either in the East or the West. And can the Wild be one, or is it going to be the Blues? Blues over the Jets would be a lot of fun if that happened. And of course, everyone's watching the battle for Ontario with Toronto and Ottawa. And then the other Montreal. I mean, can they dethrone Washington? Had a great season out there in the East. We'll see. I think Golden Knights do win the first 3 of the series. I think the Wild take the next 2, and the Golden Knights win in 6 as well.
Well, we'll see how things play out, but listeners, make sure that you stay tuned to both Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights all series long to get a full dive into both teams' quests to move on to round 2. Thanks for tuning in to our special playoff preview edition of Locked On Wild and Locked On Golden Knights. Again, make sure to like and subscribe if you have not already, and follow along throughout the rest of the series as we keep you up to date every single game. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network.